this is question 11. Now, this is a cross-text question, okay? A cross-text question is similar to the pen and paper SAT's paired passage questions. Earlier, you would have two long passages and you would have to synthesize information from the two to answer questions. This is something similar, but instead of full-fledged passages, you have short paragraphs, which should make things a bit easier. Okay, let's read text 1 and text 2, one after the other. What factors influence the abundance of species in a given ecological community? Some theorists have argued that historical diversity is a major driver of how diverse an ecological community eventually becomes. Differences in community diversity across otherwise similar habitats in this view are strongly affected by the number of species living in those habitats at earlier times. Okay, now this may seem confusing. What this means is, if you take a particular habitat, say a pond, okay, and a pond has a lot of fishes, okay, and if you look at the species diversity of the fishes, you know, how many types of species of fish are there in the pond. This passage is saying that the diversity or the existing diversity of species is very much similar to the diversity of species that existed in the past. Okay, which means that in a pond, if you have, say, 5 types of fishes, over time, you know, the species will not expand to say 100. It will not expand much. It will either remain 5 species or maybe expand to 6. Okay, so not a lot of diversity happens like in the future. Okay, so if you start out with a fixed number of species, you end up with a fixed number of species. That is what the passage, the first text is saying. Second text is saying, in 2010, a group of researchers, including biologist Carla Caceres, created artificial pools in a New York forest. They stocked some pools with a diverse mix of zooplanktons. Zooplankton species are algae or algae. They live underwater and they are responsible for producing 70% of the Earth's oxygen, and others with a single zooplankton species allowed the pool communities to develop naturally thereafter. Over the course of 4 years, Caceres and colleagues periodically measured the species diversity of the pools, finding, contrary to their expectations, okay, so this is important, contrary to their expectations, meaning whatever they expected didn't happen, the opposite happened. That by the end of the study, there was little to no difference in the pool species diversity. Okay, so let me explain the second passage. So text 2 is saying that these biologists, they created 2 artificial pools in a forest in New York. And in one pool, they had a very diverse mix of zooplankton species. Okay. And in the second pool, they had a single zooplankton species. Okay. And they allowed the pool communities to develop. They allowed the zooplankton to grow over time. Now, after 4 years, they found that there was little to no difference in the species diversity, which means that the pool containing single species of zooplankton diversified the same way that the diverse species pool diversified, which means in the end, these two became equal. Okay. So, as you can see, this is a clear contradiction of what the first passage or the first text is saying. The first text is saying if you start out with a diverse ecosystem, you get a diverse ecosystem. if you start out with a single community or single species ecosystem, then you don't end up with a diverse species ecosystem. It remains a single species ecosystem. But what is happening in text 2 is the opposite. Okay, let's read the question. Based on the texts, how would Caceres and colleagues in text 2 most likely describe the view of the theorist presented in text 1? Okay, so we know that first we need to figure out the relationship between text 1 and text 2. So text 1 does not agree with text 2. Okay, so they have a contradictory relationship. All right, based on that, let's see. It is largely correct, but it requires a minor refinement in light of the research team's results. No. This is incorrect because Caceres and colleagues, after their experimentation with the two pools, they wouldn't say that the theorists in text 1 were largely correct. Okay. It is not compelling as a theory, regardless of any experimental data collected by the research team. So we can't say that whatever text 1 is saying is not compelling. It has some merit. Okay. In this instance, Caceres and team were able to prove a part of the findings of text 1 wrong, but that doesn't negate whatever the theorists are arguing. It's not completely wrong. Okay, so we can't say it is not compelling as a theory. It has some, compelling thing about it. C says it may seem plausible, but it is not supported by the research team's finding. Okay, now this option seems correct because text 2 is indicating that Caceres and team expected to find at the end of their study that the two pools that they stocked with multiple zooplankton species would have greater diversity. Sorry, the pool that they stocked with multiple species or diverse species would have greater diversity than the pools they stocked with a single zooplankton species. But this was not the case. Okay, so it is not supported by the current research team's findings, which is Caceres and company. Okay, but that doesn't mean the theorists' view was completely incorrect. So here we only have one experiment, okay, on one species, or one. We're talking about only planktons. Okay, we're not talking about any other animals, any other plant species or animal species. We're only talking about plankton species. So in this instance, the Saracen team were proven right. But perhaps if we experimented on other species, okay, then maybe whatever the theorists are saying in text 1 could be right, but we don't know that. So we can't say anything. So C is the most plausible or rational choice because the theorists, their hypothesis seems plausible, but Caceres and team, whatever research they did in passage 2, does not support it. Okay. And D says it probably holds true only in conditions like those in the research team study. So this is incorrect because the theorists are being proven wrong by the research team study. So it cannot hold true. Okay.